NBA today. Prior to the Hornets-Warriors game, Klay Thompson was warming up, making shots, getting closer to his return, maybe, possibly. Richard, how's he look?
No, he looks amazing. And one thing Ramona just reminded me is that he tore his Achilles on Thanksgiving. So, that's what, I know he's been out for 2 years, and sometimes these get muddled, but he's still not even a full year out from his Achilles injury.
Oh, it's good to see him getting up those shots, Legs.
What I noticed was on that clip we just showed, he took as many dribbles in those 4 shots as he did tonight. He got 60 points. So Klay doesn't need a lot. That thing looks pure. It always has, always will. He can do it when he's an old man with his grandchildren. His stroke's going to look exactly the same.
Yeah, his wrist ain't hurt.
Well,
there ain't nothing wrong with his wrist.
No, he's still, look, leaving LeBron saying that he can't wait to see him. And speaking of LeBron, the Lakers superstar, LeBron James, your former teammate, Richard, is expected to miss at least 1 week, quote, with an abdominal strain, a source told ESPN's Dave McMenamin on Thursday. And while no timeline for his return has been provided by the Lakers, a source familiar with the injury told ESPN's Dave McMenamin that the team's medical staff, quote, wants to take their time with James' recovery. Richard,
I said when you get old, you could sneeze the wrong way and all of a sudden abdominal
just because that happens to you
wake up like,
doesn't mean. We've got 5 games on the slate on tap tonight with some fun ones. Donovan Mitchell and Trae Young will go head-to-head tonight in Atlanta. The Celtics visit the streaking Heat, and the Lakers look to get revenge against the Thunder. What do you like, Richard? What do you like?
Honestly, I like the Jazz Hawks. I think the Utah Jazz are playing great basketball right now. They're one of those teams that you're kind of looking at like, here we go again. They still have that Milwaukee Bucks type hump that they have to get over. So in order for people to truly believe in them, they got to keep advancing further in the postseason. I think this year could be the year.
Vince, you're calling that game. What are you looking out for?
Yep. I'm definitely looking at that game, and just look at Rudy Gobert, the way he's been playing basketball lately. 15, 16 points a game, 18 rebounds and 2 blocks. I mean, he has been a difference maker since playing in the Olympics and being featured offensively in the Olympics. He's a different guy right now.
That's going to be a fun one to call. Legs, what you watching?
I'm going to go Celtics Heat. Look, much has been reported on Boston, what went on in the locker room, makes some sensitivities. Some guys got the feelings hurt. They flushed it all out. They go out, they get a win, but they didn't play a team on this level. They go out and get an offensively challenged team, and they shut them down. Jason Tatum still hasn't busted out. So now I want to see, did it really take effect? Is there any effect? And when you play right now the best defensive team in the league, the Miami Heat, let's see what Boston can do now coming out of that team meeting against a team that potentially could get to the finals. 2 Eastern Conference teams going at it.
And we know you're drinking the Miami Heat Kool-Aid. We've made that. We. I'm hesitant to. He has done.
Oh, 3.
Okay, I need
wearing this dude like a backpack.
I know.
Wearing this dude like a backpack.
It's tough. He's heavy.
Come to the Miami Heat bandwagon.
All right. I'm on the Miami Heat bandwagon. But can you guys please stick around with me? Because coming up next, we will get more. Sarver is accused of overseeing an organization that many employees have described as toxic and sometimes hostile, reporting from ESPN's Baxter Holmes reveals. Holmes interviews with more than 70 former and current Suns employees who've been a part of the team throughout Sarver's 17-year tenure, allege he's used racially insensitive and even lewd language repeatedly in the office. He also displayed conduct employees recount as inappropriate and misogynistic. And multiple current and former employees also told ESPN about conduct by other members of the Suns leadership team that they felt contributed to the work environment. And while none said that Sarver was involved in those incidents, many felt that Sarver's own conduct contributed to the culture that affected how some other managers within the organization treated their employees.
The Phoenix Suns, for the first time in 28 years, are going back to the NBA Finals.
The Phoenix Suns began this season as defending Western Conference champions. A team riding high with the veteran presence of all-time great Chris Paul, a young star in Devin Booker, a top coach in Monty Williams, and reigning Executive of the Year, James Jones. But an ESPN investigation has revealed that the Suns' success on the court has emerged alongside a sometimes toxic and hostile workplace under majority owner Robert Sarver. More than 70 current and former employees interviewed by ESPN recounted conduct by Sarver they felt was inappropriate and misogynistic, including the use of the N-word and lewd comments made during staff meetings. Former Suns head coach Earl Watson told ESPN that Sarver once used the slur after a game. You know, why does Draymond Green get to run up the court and say N-word? Sarver, who is white, allegedly said, repeating the N-word several times in a row. You can't say that, Watson, who is black and Hispanic, told Sarver. Why? Sarver replied. Draymond Green says N-word. You can't expletive say that, Watson said again. Sarver denied he used the N-word through his legal team, saying this is absolutely untrue. Sarver said he talked with a Suns player who had received a technical foul during the game for using the N-word, questioning why he had received a technical when other players who say it do not. The player, through his agent, told ESPN that he does not recall speaking to Sarver that night. I've never called anyone or any group of people the N-word, or referred to anyone or any group of people by the N-word, either verbally or in writing. Multiple Suns employees also recounted inappropriate conduct from Sarver, such as him once passing around a picture of his wife in a bikini to employees and speaking about sex with his wife. We're passing it around like a hot potato. Like, what in the hell are we supposed to do with this? That was just, one early glimpse at the man. Sarver, through his legal team, told ESPN the moment has been twisted into something more nefarious than it was, and that he has never discussed his sex life in the office. A retailer sent my wife and me a sample along with a brochure, and I took a picture of her in the sample. I took the brochure and picture of her and gave it to the people at the Suns in charge of overseeing merchandise with the message, here's the catalog, this is what the swimsuit looks like, and if you have any interest in carrying this line in the team shop, then here's the number to call. Multiple current and former employees also told ESPN about conduct by other members of the Suns leadership team that they felt contributed to the work environment. While none said Sarver was involved in those incidents, many felt that Sarver's own conduct contributed to a culture that affected how some other managers within the organization treated their employees. They said they don't know how no one has ever been held accountable. If the commissioner comes in and investigates to see what the expletive is going on in Phoenix, he would be appalled. Jason Rowley, president and CEO of the Suns, defended Sarver. This story is completely outrageous and false. It doesn't represent at all the Robert Sarver I've worked alongside of for 15 years. He's not a racist and he's not a sexist.
During the bubble, Draymond Green was fined $50,000 for tampering, saying Devin Booker should leave the Suns. And Draymond tweeted this earlier today, but I was fined, laughing out loud, shaking my head. And then shortly after Baxter's story came out, the vice chairman of the Phoenix Suns released this statement. The conduct he is alleged to have committed has stunned and saddened me and is unacceptable. The well-being and safety of every Suns employee, player, coach, and stakeholder is first and foremost our priority. My sincerest sympathy goes out to all of those whose lives and professions have been impacted. And although today's revelations fall under the jurisdiction of the league, which decides and takes any action based on its findings, I offer my support to ensure there is full accountability. Baxter Holmes, who reported this story, joins me now. And Baxter, nobody knows the story better than you. You reported it. You investigated it. What themes stand out to you from the culture under Robert Sarver's ownership?
One of the things that will probably always stay with me was how a very simple question to current and former staffers led to just really remarkable responses about the culture of the organization. And that question was, what's it like to work there? Or what was it like to work there? And you would hear the same themes over and over and again from people who worked in virtually every department across the organization throughout a 17-year period. And they would share the same kinds of stories. It was eerily similar with respect to, verbal harassment, retaliation, a culture of fear, a culture of intimidation, sharing stories about misogyny, racism, and a top-down, as we noted in the story, of Robert driving the culture, but then those beneath him acting in many ways in the same that he did.
Your reporting here is so thorough, but how was this allowed to go on for as long as it did, Baxter?
This is for as many questions as I asked of staffers, this is the question that they probably asked me the most. And they described watching investigations unfold in Dallas and with the Clippers, and wondering, over a 17-year period, how has, not only you could say of the NBA, but just how has no entity, any entity at all, stepped in and held anyone to account, investigated the culture. Certainly there's been a ton of turnover, and there's how has no one taken a closer look? It's a question that many have asked of me throughout this process.
Interesting. So, one thing that stood out to me through all of this was the lack of HR. There were so many examples, but just one was the woman who said that after being assaulted, HR decided that moving her desk away from the male coworker who allegedly assaulted her was the solution. So why wasn't there overall, not just in that specific instance, more of a response?
This was a theme that came up time and again from so many staffers. In fact, some were texting me just before I came on air with you guys about the problems in HR and feeling that in a culture of fear and retaliation that they had no outlet to go to voice issues about those above them with respect to the conduct, with respect to behavior. Certainly that situation was one that was cited to me as an example of a failure and further evidence of employees saying, this is why we don't want to go to HR. Also, HR employees telling me that they would privately pull employees aside and saying, we cannot make amends to whatever the issues are you're dealing with. We recommend that you would just sue the organization.
Wow. So when all of this began, the Suns were a team that had repeatedly been missing the playoffs, but they made their last NBA Finals, they made their first NBA Finals appearance just last year. So what then is the morale inside the organization now?
It was really striking to me because when I began reporting on this story, they had momentum coming off 8-0 run in the bubble after 10 years of being at the very bottom of the league.
Right.
And seeing this run, I was curious, what's the morale inside the organization? And people time and again said, in many ways, the culture is lower than it's ever been because all of the things that have plagued us for so long with respect to the culture and the workplace still exist. But there's all this excitement around the team finally being good again, but we on the inside are having to deal with these issues. And the word that people kept using is, it's bittersweet. We're not able to enjoy this.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Baxter, for your reporting and for joining us. I'm sure you're going to be back with us as we continue to monitor this story. And according to Baxter's reporting, NBA spokesperson Mike Bass said the league has not, quote, received a complaint of misconduct at the Suns organization through any of our processes, including our confidential workplace misconduct hotline or other correspondence. We're now joined by senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski. Adrian, what are the next steps for the league here?
Malika, the NBA's had about 3 hours to digest Baxter's story. It's certainly a long story, comprehensive, a great deal of reporting in there. I'm told that they're planning to announce here at some point a league investigation into the Suns. And listen, you can expect that to take some time. You've seen a couple other owner-centric investigations in Adam Silver's tenure, Donald Sterling with the Clippers, the Atlanta Hawks with Bruce Levinson. Those where there was audio tape with Donald Sterling. There were emails in the Atlanta situation. This is a story built more or exclusively really around interviews, some of which are with sources who were not named in the story. So you can expect it to be a lengthy investigation, especially, of course, if Robert Sarver continues to deny much of what he is alleged to have done and what numerous sources described in Phoenix. And so, listen, I think you talk to owners around the league today, executives, players. I think there's a lot of expectation that the league is going to really dig into this Robert Sarver Suns situation and try to come out with even more answers, not just corroborating the reporting of Baxter Holmes, but the opportunity to go out and perhaps have more people give them more information than perhaps was even provided to Baxter for his story.
So the expectation is for an investigation, but potentially one that isn't necessarily swift. Right. What's your sense of how the team will respond in the aftermath of this story, Woj?
Malika, the Suns and their players, their coaching staff, their front office, they have had time to prepare for their reaction to this story. And my sense is that Chris Paul is really, I think, the individual in that organization that they're going to lean on. He has been through a number of crises as a leader, as a player. going back to the Donald Sterling situation with the Clippers, and as the Players Association president, getting his peers into the bubble and then getting them through the bubble. This is not uncharted territory for Chris Paul, and I think you're going to see not just the players leaning on Chris Paul's leadership here, but the front office, Monty Williams and his coaching staff, that they're going to take their cues from Chris Paul, who has had time to formulate how he would like to lead and handle this situation.
Thank you so much, Woj. We will stay tuned for more of your and Baxter's insight and reporting as this continues to unfold.
Thanks, Malika.
On the court, the Suns' tenure under Sarver stated well. The 3 conference finals appearances in 6 seasons and the 3rd best record in the NBA during that stretch. Then the Suns went through a franchise-long 10-season playoff drought in which Phoenix recorded the league's 3rd worst record. The Suns ended that drought in dramatic fashion with the league's 2nd best record last season on the way to a finals appearance. And one of the players during Sarver's tenure joins us now, our colleague Vince Carter. Vince, in the 2010-2011 season, you were traded midseason from the Magic to the Suns. Robert Sarver was in his 7th season as owner. When you read this article today, what memories stood out to you from your short time playing with the Suns?
Well, Malika, I was traded there, so it was a lot going on as a player, just figuring out the lay of the land, more so on the court. So initially, I might have had a phone call or two with Robert Sarver, and then from there, as the season progressed, nearing the back end of the season, on the planes, I got to know him a little more, just by us playing cards and having fun on the court. So, on the plane and go on the road. So I didn't really have a lot of conversations with him. I know he's a fiery guy. He loves to win. He wants to win. And that was really the extent of it. I didn't really see a lot of the things, that I read, and I'm just like, my jaw was dropped, when I would see anything having to do with 2010, 2011, anywhere around that area. I just tried to think back on, did I see any of that? And for me personally, and I wish I had more. It's just I was going through the trade and just trying to figure things out for myself as well.
Yeah, clearly there was so much kind of going on for you personally in that time. There is so much that goes into being traded. Do you recall any instances in which you had specific interactions in person with Robert Sarver?
Not really. I read a couple of pieces in there about him laughing and joking, making jokes in the room. Yes, he did that, and you laugh and joke, and if you didn't feel it was offensive, you just took it as it was and kept it moving. So I never had any instances of racism or him just a racist act or anything. My good friend Corliss Williamson, just reading about his situation or anything, I didn't. I can honestly say I didn't see him that often. He would walk through, speak. We were just getting to know each other because I got there late. So the guys that he knew, he had more conversation with and laughed and joked a little more. But reading it now, I'm just still in awe.
So the one thing that stuck out to me from Baxter's reporting was when one person said, if someone looks into the Suns organization, they're going to have a lot of things to find, number one, and that a lot of folks seem to not be only surprised that this hasn't come out sooner. Was that your impression as someone who's been there, has been around?
Well, for sure. You wonder, 17 years, how does this kind of fly under the radar, for one? You mentioned that, and I said the same thing. I'm like, yeah, right. How does that happen? The only instances that I know that I've heard and kind of experienced is as a player coming back. After I played there, he walked into the locker room. From what I was told from 2 teammates that are reliable and trust in what they say, that he wasn't happy with me playing well coming back into Phoenix, and we were winning the game, and he wanted them to take me out, put me on the ground. Don't let him have fun in our building, because he felt like I was trying to show him and the team up. So, I read the piece about him going in there with about what was it? Offense, about rebounding or whatever the case may be, coming in the locker room. I've heard that before, and I experienced that, hearing from the players. So, that doesn't surprise me. Like I said before, he's a fiery guy. He wants to win. And you can see that. There's the other instance, if you remember back in the lockout time, we read the report or heard the report about he and LeBron James going at it verbally, just just for whatever reason it was. I don't remember, but I remember that happening, and I was like, yeah, I can see that happening because he's a fiery guy. And he says what he wants when he wants to.
Being a fiery guy is one thing, Vince, but to take you out, what does that mean? What was your reaction to that?
Obviously it was surprising. And one thing he said, every time I scored the ball, looking at him. Of course, when you go back to your team, that old team, you want to score, you want to play well and show, hey, this is what I can do.
Sure.
And I guess he felt that I was trying to show him up or whatever the case may be. I don't know. And when it was told to me, I was just like, wow. So you're being careful. I was thankful that those two guys mentioned it to me. And nothing ever happened of it. But he wanted to win. That's just how it was, and I understood it and kept it moving and moved on. I kind of just brushed it off. I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
Nothing happened, so it was no big deal. It was nothing to really talk about because nothing really happened. Nobody got hurt.
Yeah, well, but nobody got hurt. Someone could have got hurt. It doesn't seem to me that take you out was a take you out of the game. That seems to me more like a take you out as in something physical. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah. No, you're right. He was just, send a message. Don't let him have fun in our building.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Vince. And please stick around. We will have much more on this throughout our show, but also games that we're going to talk about with you and with others coming up on NBA Today. Who stood out the most in the NBA? In the NBA is always a busy night as the slate is packed. Last night was no different. 11 games across the league, joined again by Vince and Richard and Tim Legler. So what was the biggest takeaway? Biggest takeaway from last night? I'll start with you, Vince.
My biggest takeaway is 76ers right now 6-2, 4-game winning streak, second in the East. You hear me? Second in the East after all the noise that we've been hearing about Ben Simmons. That's easily can be a distraction and not playing well. But Joel Embiid is getting help. Niang averaging 12 points. Seth Curry 17 points. Maxey 14 points. Korkmaz 11 points. They're getting some help from everyone. Everybody's contributing and doing the job. And right now, the Sixers are making some noise.
Vince, I was watching Legs smile and nod as you were talking, like you were in his head. What do you think?
Well, listen, beautiful. You look at all the things they have dealt with, not to mention the fact the distraction with Ben Simmons off the court and what that has done to that team. That's got to be a difficult thing to play for. I think for me, though, my biggest takeaway last night is the Nets. Here's why. That's their cleanest game of the year. 34 assists. If you take out some rough shooting nights from Blake Griffin and James Harden, they shoot almost 60% from the field. The rest of those guys, it's a good team they beat too. It's the Atlanta Hawks, the conference finals from a year ago. We've talked so much about what's going on with the Nets. Last night, they showed you what they're capable of when they move the basketball, and even on a night when James Harden still hasn't really broken out, Richard.
Yeah, he's done good. We got to keep our distance, even though we're both vaccinated.
That's right.
I know. Well, look, for me, there was a lot of things, but one thing that I want to talk about, I don't even know if it's going to show up on the graphics. The Raptors have actually done a pretty good job. Right? That is something that I want to give a little bit of credit to Nick Nurse. It is very difficult. You lose the greatest Raptor ever in Kyle Lowry. You have injuries. You have a brand new young team. And you know what they've done? They have just played consistent basketball. And that starts to show you a consistent organization. When don't matter ups and downs, you look at Miami, San Antonio, they might have some downs, but their downs are never super down. They just are kind of somewhat consistent.
All right, but there's a lot to choose from. Ja Morant is must-see TV, although he tweeted that the whole team is must-see TV. That's what he's saying. And DeMar DeRozan goes for 37 again, but who is the player for you that stole the show?
Who's going with first? Me?
I'm going with Richard's going with you, so I'll go with
I'm going to go with Jordan Poole. Okay, now this is a guy that had a great last couple months of the season, so it's not a shock that he came in very confident. Here's why it's been so important what he's done. Obviously, they're still dealing with depth issues waiting on Klay Thompson. The 3 worst games of the season by Steph Curry. I'm talking about games where he made 9 threes total collectively in those games. He shot 30% from the field. In those 3 games, all wins, Jordan Poole averaged 24 points a game, 50%. He's made up for the 3-point production. So it's not just the fact that he's playing well. It's when he's playing well on nights with Steph Curry struggling.
Well, Richard doesn't totally understand how microphones work, so he's trying to remember who he said.
I was like, who did I say?
Who did I choose? There's so many to choose from, Richard.
Honestly, it was Paul George. No, Paul George. They've got off to a little bit of a slow start with the Clippers, and obviously there's no Kawhi, but they knew that going into the season. And I was one of the people that truly believe that Paul George is one of those guys that plays better when he's when he's a 1A. He plays more aggressive. He gets locked in. He does all the things that you want him to do. Kind of like the Indiana Paul George. That's the guy that we see. When he becomes a 1B, I think he struggles a little bit. So last night, the way he played was so impressive, and Paul George is pretty good.
Vince, nodding your head, so I'm going to say you like Paul George. Real quick, just the name.
Like
just the name. Who is it? Paul George?
Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant,
man.
Kevin Durant.
All
right.
Did you see his third quarter?
Gaining up the Legler. Gaining up the Legler. I see it. All right. Tip off your weekend with our NBA Friday doubleheader on ESPN. On Phoenix Suns owner Robert Sarver, who is accused of overseeing an organization that many employees have described as toxic and sometimes hostile. Reporting from ESPN's Baxter Holmes reveals Holmes interviewed with more than 70 former and current Suns employees who've been a part of the team throughout Sarver's 17-year tenure and allege he has used racially insensitive and lewd language repeatedly in the office. The Suns host the Rockets tonight in downtown Phoenix before getting a visit from the Hawks on Saturday. We now welcome in Brian Windhorst, who is in Phoenix. And Brian, the Suns actually put out a statement 13 days ahead of this reporting being published, and you've been with the team basically since then. What have the players been preparing for?
Yeah, Malika, that put him into a bit of a stressful situation. That came out 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and they've been here in Phoenix for about a week and a half. They've had a long homestand, and during that time, they've been preparing for this day. And in talking to some of the players, one of the things that they've been saying is, go back to what we did in the 2020 bubble in Orlando, when all the stress that they had associated with that, you were there every moment of it. You certainly know how stressful it was. They got into a bunker mentality, didn't let the other things that were dangerous and could distract them get in their way, and they went 8-0. And that is what they have talked about as they have prepared for this moment. They have not played well early in this season. They're trying to get the rhythm back that they had on their run to the finals, and this, hanging over their heads for the last week and a half or two has not helped the situation.
Yeah, that has to be a challenge. You'll be in the arena tonight. What are you watching for and possibly even expecting, Brian?
Right, so Monty Williams elected not to make a comment when others did when the Suns first made the statements. And so as the voice of the organization and one of the leaders certainly in this whole league, how he treats this and how he evaluates this ahead of this game tonight will set the tone not only for his team but for reactions elsewhere. So the way Monty reacts to this is going to be very important. And then after the game, we're expecting to see and hear from Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Again, two players whose voices matter a lot, both in Phoenix and outside Phoenix. And, so not all the players who are here were here when some of the allegations happened that Baxter Holmes wrote about in this story. But Devin Booker, one of the longest tenured Suns, has been. So in addition to the gravity of a player like Chris Paul, what Devin Booker says is also going to be important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Brian. Some of the key headlines of Baxter's story surround alleged misogyny and include the following. A former female marketing employee said Sarver would frequently use inappropriate language such as, "Do I own you? Are you one of mine?" Said the employee, "He makes you feel like you belong to him. I didn't want to be alone with him at any point." And Sarver, through his legal team, denied using such language. Quote, "The level of misogyny and racism is beyond the pale," said one Suns co-owner about Sarver. "It's embarrassing as an owner." So for more reporting on the level of misogyny and allegations surrounding the treatment of women in the Suns workplace, I want to welcome in senior writer Ramona Shelburne. And Ramona, what stood out to you most about the egregious behavior towards women in the organization?
Well, there's a particularly appalling anecdote where Robert Sarver makes a comment. It was about they had a game in Los Angeles and the players didn't play well, and there was a thought that maybe they were out partying or something. And he says to a bunch of people in earshot, "Well, we should fly some girls in for the players to Los Angeles next time," and it was said as a joke, but there was a female employee present, and everybody else kind of laughed it off. But what can the female employee say?
Right.
I mean, there's some of the stuff. It was hard for me to read. Even one female staffer said she contemplated suicide from working there. That they went to therapy. And